In the year 2127, humanity's long-awaited moment finally arrived. Earth had been looking up at the stars for centuries, dreaming of meeting other life forms. For years, scientists had speculated about the possibility of alien life, and in a way, they were always ready to discover something or someone out there. But when the moment of truth came, it was nothing like anyone had expected. The aliens arrived in the form of the Zephrons, a species unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. Their ships were sleek, glowing like silver streaks across the night sky, able to move faster than anything humans could ever build. They were tall and thin, with shimmering skin that seemed to shift color with every movement. Their technology was far beyond anything on Earth: flying cities, robotic workers, and super-intelligent computers that could answer any question before it was even asked. At first, the Zephrons looked at humans with little more than curiosity. They had watched Earth from afar, observing human behavior with a mix of amusement and indifference. To the Zephrons, humans were little more than an experiment in the making, primitive creatures with some promise, but not worth much attention. They watched Earth's growing technologies, its struggles, and its victories, but only as distant observers. They considered humans to be just one more species in the grand story of the universe, not particularly important or unique. The Zephrons did not come to Earth out of a sense of kindness or a desire for friendship. They came because they had noticed something odd about Earth's people. There was something about humanity's creativity and unpredictability that made the Zephrons curious. How could a species so primitive be so full of ideas? How could they invent machines, solve problems, and tell stories when they were so young compared to the Zephrons, who had mastered the art of perfect efficiency? One human in particular, Dr. Amara Green, became the catalyst for their decision to study Earth more closely. Dr. Green was a scientist at the top of her field, specializing in space exploration and communication technology. She was deeply fascinated by the stars and the possibility of contacting life beyond Earth. For years, she had been working on a project to send messages across the universe using a new form of interdimensional communication, a signal that could bridge the gap between different dimensions. Dr. Green's discovery was nothing short of accidental. One evening, while running a routine experiment in her lab, she activated a signal she hadn't meant to. She had been trying to create a simple form of communication to send to nearby space probes, but the experiment had a strange side effect. It broke through to a much farther distance than anyone had expected. The signal didn't just bounce off nearby satellites, it reached something far beyond the stars, something that wasn't supposed to be possible. As Dr. Green adjusted the settings, she heard a series of strange noises. At first, she thought it was just interference, but then the noise formed into clear patterns, words, in a language she had never heard before. The words were filled with strange tones and frequencies, almost like a melody. As her fingers danced over the controls, the signal grew stronger, and it became clear to her that she was not alone. The Zephrons had been watching. They had intercepted her signal and, unlike humans, immediately recognized it as a form of communication. The aliens had been aware of humanity for some time, but it was this signal, this strange, unexpected burst of energy, that made them decide to investigate further. Dr. Green's accidental message had sparked the Zephrons' interest in Earth. They realized that this primitive species might have something valuable to offer, something they hadn't anticipated. The Zephrons began to study the signal more closely, analyzing it from every angle. They were impressed by the way the humans had tapped into dimensions beyond their understanding. This was a technology the Zephrons had never perfected. The humans, though far less advanced in most areas, had stumbled upon something the Zephrons had missed. For the Zephrons, this was a moment of surprise. They had assumed that the humans were nothing more than a distraction in the grand scheme of the universe. But now, they realized that Earth's people were capable of things they hadn't considered. Something in the way humans approached problems creatively, and without the cold, calculated efficiency the Zephrons relied on, had intrigued them. Soon, the Zephrons made contact with Dr. Green. She was astounded when she received a direct message from the alien species, not in words, but through a series of vivid images and emotions. The Zephrons did not communicate like humans. Their minds were more advanced, more connected to technology, but the message was clear: we have been watching. We want to understand you. Dr. Green spent months communicating with the Zypherans. She found herself fascinated by their way of thinking. They were logical, brilliant, and detached from emotion. They did not feel the need for things like art or music in the way humans did. Everything was about efficiency and order. But they had seen something in humans, something that made them curious about Earth's potential. The Zypherans, who had mastered everything from artificial intelligence to space travel, realized that they could learn something new from humanity. At the same time, Dr. Green couldn't help but wonder if the Zypherans would see humanity as valuable in their own right, or if they would simply use humans as a stepping stone for their own advancement. She understood the risks of such contact, but couldn't ignore the possibility that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change the future of humanity. As the Zypherans watched and studied, they began to see humans as more than just a primitive species. They saw potential, something they could never predict. And that marked the beginning of a new chapter in Earth's history. A chapter that would change everything. After the unexpected contact between Dr. Amara Green and the Zypherans, the alien species began to study humanity closely. The Zypherans had already been intrigued by the creativity and resourcefulness of Earth's people. What they didn't expect, however, was how deeply they would become fascinated by the small things, the simple, everyday gestures, the way humans express themselves, and even the quirks that set people apart. At first, their fascination was innocent. The Zypherans began to copy small, seemingly insignificant aspects of human life. They watched how humans greeted one another, the way they dressed, and the expressions they used to communicate. One of the first things they noticed was the simple handshake. What started as an observation soon turned into practice. The Zypherans began greeting each other with the same gesture, their long, thin fingers clasping in imitation of the human tradition. Though the action was not entirely necessary in their culture, it seemed to hold some strange significance to the humans they had encountered. The Zypherans even started mimicking human fashion. They studied the clothes people wore, from casual jeans and t-shirts to formal attire, like suits and dresses. They copied the fabrics, the colors, and the patterns, creating their own versions that were nearly identical to human designs. But as they wore these clothes, they couldn't help but notice how much human fashion carried meaning, how a certain outfit could symbolize someone's status, mood, or personality. They began to understand that even the simplest of human decisions were layered with personal stories, choices, and cultural significance. Then, the Zypherans began to move beyond small gestures and fashion. They began to focus on something far more complex: human technology. The Zypherans, who had already mastered technology far beyond human comprehension, started to replicate Earth's inventions. They were fascinated by how humanity had created things like the light bulb, the telephone, and the airplane. These were simple, elegant solutions to complex problems, and the Zypherans saw the value in them. They began by recreating these technologies, improving them with their superior knowledge, but also taking care to preserve the essence of the human originals. The Zypherans didn't stop at basic inventions. They delved deeper, studying the work of Earth's greatest minds, scientists, engineers, and inventors who had shaped human progress. They recreated the electric car, making it more efficient than ever before, and built artificial intelligence systems that outperformed anything humans had imagined. The Zypherans even looked at art, something they had never truly valued in their own culture, and replicated famous paintings, sculptures, and music with uncanny precision. They couldn't understand the emotional depth that art held for humans, but they saw its importance. They admired the beauty of human creation, and while they could copy it perfectly, they felt something was missing. Humans began to notice these changes. At first, it was just little things, a painting here, a technological breakthrough there. But soon, the Zypherans were producing their own versions of everything that had once been created by humans. New inventions appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, that resembled Earth's greatest achievements. The Zypherans, however, weren't content with mere imitation. They improved and enhanced everything they copied. Their versions of human inventions were perfect, efficient, and flawless. It didn't take long before humans started feeling uneasy. The Zypherans' flawless imitations were so perfect that they began to overshadow the original human creations. Electric cars that could run for thousands of miles on a single charge. Artificial intelligence systems that could solve any problem in seconds. Robots that could replicate the work of human artists and musicians, but without the same mistakes, the little imperfections that made human work unique. As the Zypherans continued to advance, the line between imitation and improvement began to blur. It was no longer clear whether the Zypherans were simply copying human inventions, or if they were doing something far more complex, taking what humanity had created and making it their own. Some humans started to feel as if they were losing control over their own creations, their own culture. The situation grew more complicated. The Zypherans, with their perfect replicas, became a symbol of everything that humans were not. The Zypherans were efficient, logical, and precise in a way that humans could never be. They didn't make mistakes, they didn't have accidents, and they didn't have emotional connections to their work. Everything they created was flawless, and soon the world began to praise their inventions, ignoring the human origins. People started asking the question that everyone feared: are we being replaced? Was there a place for humans in a world where the Zypherans had perfected everything they had ever created? The Zypherans' machines and creations were flawless, and they seemed to be moving faster than humans could keep up. Their machines didn't break, their cars didn't need repairs, and their AI systems didn't need constant updates. While humans still had creativity, the Zypherans' mechanical perfection made it seem like they were slowly but surely taking over everything. Many people began to feel obsolete, like they were no longer needed in a world where everything had been improved and perfected by the Zypherans. The Zypherans didn't need to create the emotional depth or cultural significance that humans had built into their inventions. They had no interest in the messy, unpredictable nature of human creativity. To the Zypherans, the world was just a series of problems to be solved perfectly, efficiently, and without error. The more the Zypherans copied, the more humanity began to question its place in the universe. What was it that made humans special? If the Zypherans could copy everything, perfect everything, then was there any room left for human uniqueness? People began to feel like they were losing something valuable, something irreplaceable. But what the Zypherans didn't understand, and what humanity was beginning to realize, was that there was something in humans that could never be replicated: the unpredictable spark of creativity, the passion, and the emotional depth that drove everything they did. It was that spark that the Zypherans couldn't copy, no matter how perfect their imitations became. As the Zypherans continued to study humanity and improve upon everything they copied, something unexpected began to happen. What started as simple imitation turned into something far more impressive. The Zypherans, with their advanced technology and flawless designs, didn't just copy human inventions, they began to surpass them in every way. It was as if the Zypherans had taken the very essence of human creativity and perfected it. They built machines that were more efficient than anything humanity had ever dreamed of. Their transportation systems were flawless flying cars that never ran out of power, super-fast trains that traveled without even the slightest bump or delay. They created clean energy systems that were beyond anything humans could imagine, running on resources that Earth had never tapped into before. And when it came to artificial intelligence, the Zypherans outperformed Earth's brightest minds. Their AIs were flawless, processing information in an instant and solving problems before they even became problems. Everything the Zypherans touched seemed to improve in ways that humans couldn't keep up with. The Zypherans didn't stop there. They also began to create art, beautiful, lifelike paintings and sculptures that were so perfect it was hard to believe they weren't created by machines. The Zypherans didn't understand the emotional depth behind human art. To them, art was simply a matter of design and execution, and they made perfect replicas of human masterpieces. But their versions lacked the feeling, the story, the soul that came from human hands. Still, the Zypherans' art became incredibly popular, admired for its perfection and flawless beauty. They didn't just stop at technology and art, they looked at human society itself. The Zypherans studied the ways humans interacted, the social systems, and the way societies were built. They mimicked human social structures, but with their own twist. In the Zypheran version, everything was perfectly organized, each person playing their role without deviation. There was no mess, no conflict. Every job was done perfectly, without the need for discussion or disagreement. At first, it seemed like a dream, a society without chaos, where everything worked perfectly. but it also felt cold, mechanical, and emotionless. There was no place for the messy, unpredictable nature of human feelings. The kind of creativity that made people unique. It wasn't long before humans began to feel the weight of the change. Dr. Amara Green, the scientist who had first made contact with the Zypherons, couldn't help but watch in awe and growing despair as the Zypherons excelled in everything. She had been proud of her work, proud of humanity's inventions, but now it felt like those accomplishments were slowly being erased, replaced by the flawless copies of the Zypherons. At first, the Zypherons had seemed like a distant, almost harmless force. But now, their perfect technology, art, and society were overshadowing everything humans had worked so hard to build. The tables had turned. The aliens once seen as mysterious and advanced were now outshining the humans they had once considered primitive. Everything the Zypherons touched turned to gold. Their machines worked without flaw, their systems ran without hiccups, and their society was free of the complications and flaws that defined human life. Humans began to question their own place in the world. The very inventions that had once made them proud, the light bulb, the airplane, the computer, were now just another tool in the Zypheran empire. What once defined humanity's place in history now seemed irrelevant. The Zypherons had not only copied humanity's creations, but had made them better, more efficient, more perfect. They had surpassed humanity in almost every way. As time passed, it became clear to Dr. Green and others that humanity's best creations, once cherished as brilliant symbols of progress, had been reduced to mere imitations. The Zypherons, with their perfect designs, had made human inventions obsolete. Electric cars were no longer special because the Zypherons' versions never needed charging, never broke down. Artificial intelligence systems were no longer impressive because the Zypherons' AI had the ability to predict and solve problems before they even appeared. What was once groundbreaking now seemed like child's play in comparison. People began to lose hope. They could still create, still innovate, but it was no longer enough. The Zypherons were faster, smarter, and more efficient. What was the point of inventing something new when the Zypherons could just copy it, improve it, and make it perfect in a matter of days? Humanity began to feel irrelevant. Their contributions to science, technology, art, and society felt like nothing compared to the perfect versions the Zypherons had built. Even the emotional connections that humans held dear, love, passion, creativity, seemed trivial compared to the cold, logical perfection of the Zypherons. Humans had always valued the little imperfections that made things unique, but the Zypherons had no need for such things. To them, imperfection was a flaw to be eliminated, not something to be celebrated. Dr. Green spent sleepless nights thinking about the future. She had worked so hard to bring humanity to the forefront of space exploration and technological advancement. But now, it seemed like the very future she had fought for was slipping through her fingers. She wondered if humanity's time had passed. Was there any room left for humanity in a universe where perfection was the ultimate goal? As the Zypherons continued to dominate, their influence spread. Humans watched as their inventions were replaced by better versions without the heart, without the messiness that made human creations unique. It felt as if the soul of humanity was being erased, replaced by cold, flawless efficiency. But amidst this growing despair, a small seed of resistance began to take root. Dr. Green and a few others started to realize that perfection might not be all it was cracked up to be. Perhaps there was still something in humanity that the Zypherons could never replicate. They didn't know it yet, but the true fight for humanity's place in the universe was just beginning. For months, the Zypherons had taken over. Their flawless, perfect versions of humanity's greatest inventions had slowly wiped away any sense of pride that humans once had in their own creations. It seemed like the world was no longer their own. As the Zypherons advanced, it felt like there was nothing left for humanity. Their machines were better, their art more beautiful, and their society flawless. The perfect world the Zypherons created was one that left little room for human imperfection. Dr. Amara Green, once the proud scientist who had made the first connection with the Zypherons, found herself lost in a sea of doubt. How could humanity ever compete with perfection? How could they stand out when everything they had ever built seemed to be swept aside by the aliens' flawless mechanical designs? But then, just when it seemed like all hope was lost, something amazing happened. It wasn't technology that saved them. It wasn't advanced weapons or new inventions. It was something much simpler and far more powerful. It was creativity. Unlike the Zyphorans, whose society was built around logic and precision, humans had something different. They had emotions. They had unpredictable ideas, passions, and the ability to think in ways that didn't always make sense. The Zyphorans, perfect as they were, couldn't replicate that. They were stuck in their own world of flawless designs and mathematical precision, unable to break free from their rigid systems. They couldn't understand the chaotic beauty of a human thought. Dr. Green and a small group of humans engineers, artists, and scientists decided it was time to fight back. They knew they couldn't beat the Zyphorans at their own game. The aliens were too perfect, their technology too advanced. But what they could do, what only humans could do, was use their creativity to create something the Zyphorans could never understand. They set out to create something that would stand in stark contrast to the mechanical perfection of the Zyphorans, living art. These weren't just machines, they were creations that relied on emotion, intuition, and human feelings. They built machines that could respond to human emotions, designs that weren't cold and calculated, but messy, unpredictable, and beautiful in their imperfections. The first of their creations was a machine that could paint. But instead of using precise, perfect strokes like the Zyphorans might, this machine used patterns and colors that changed based on the emotional input of those around it. It would shift as people entered the room, responding to their mood, their energy. The paint splattered, sometimes messily, creating designs that felt alive and full of energy. It wasn't perfect, but that's what made it special. Next, they built machines that played music. But not the kind of music the Zyphorans might have made perfect, flawless symphonies that could be replicated 1,000 times without a single note out of place. No, these machines played music that was influenced by human feelings. The sound changed depending on the listener's emotions, fluctuating with the rhythms of their heartbeats. It was unpredictable, just like the human experience. The humans also designed machines that could tell stories. But these weren't stories written in perfect logic or without any room for emotion. They were stories that changed each time they were told, reacting to the audience, pulling from their collective memories, dreams, and experiences. The stories weren't flawless, and they didn't always make sense. They were messy, but in that mess, there was something beautiful, something that no Zyphoran mind could replicate. As these creations came to life, the humans realized something incredible. The Zyphorans could replicate anything, but they couldn't replicate this. They couldn't create something that was alive with emotion, driven by the chaos and unpredictability that humans embraced. Their creations, perfect as they were, lacked the spark that made them human. The messy, unrefined energy that came from human creativity was something no machine could ever mimic, no matter how advanced it became. When the Zyphorans saw these new creations, they were confused. They couldn't understand why these machines didn't follow logic. They couldn't grasp the idea of a painting that changed depending on how people felt, or music that was influenced by human emotion. To the Zyphorans, everything had a precise answer, a perfect formula. This chaos, this unpredictability, it didn't make sense. It didn't fit into their perfect world. But the more the Zyphorans watched, the more they realized that these imperfect creations had something that their perfect machines lacked. There was life in them. There was something that resonated deep within the humans, something that spoke to the heart. The Zyphorans may have perfected the physical world, but they could not perfect the soul of creation. It was this human spark, the ability to think beyond logic, the ability to feel and create with passion, that helped humanity reclaim their place in the galaxy. The Zyphorans, for all their perfection, were left in awe of what humans had created. The machines might not have been flawless, but they were real. They were alive with the energy of human creativity, and that made them invaluable. Humanity learned that their true strength didn't lie in how perfect their inventions were, but in their ability to think beyond what was possible, to create something new from emotion and chaos. They realized that being human was not about competing with the Zypherons. It was about embracing what made them unique. The Zypherons could copy, they could improve, but they could never replicate the human spark. And in the end, that spark was what would keep humanity's place in the galaxy alive, proving that even in a universe of perfect machines, there was something irreplaceable about being human.